just not that guy. What's going on, folks? Today I'm going to be reviewing Michael, the Michael Jackson biopic, starring Far Jackson as Michael Jackson, Coleman Domingo as Joe Jackson, and Giuliano Valdi as the younger Michael Jackson, who I believe needs to get shouted out way more because holy moly, he was phenomenal. This movie was written by John Logan and directed by Anton Fuqua, who also directed Training Day with Denzel Washington. The movie comes in at about 2 hours, and as per usual, I'm going to start with the things that I didn't like and then work my way into the things that I loved. Speaking of the duration of the film, that is my first gripe with the film. I wish it was longer. I wish it was much longer, especially when I heard rumblings that there is a 4-hour cut out there, maybe a little bit longer. Here's one thing about Michael Jackson that I think a lot of producers and general people know. People are always going to show up. So if you give us a 4-hour movie, I promise we will watch the 4-hour movie. So I kind of wish it was a little bit longer. I wish it touched on more things. I wish it drew out a lot more story points that it was trying to lean into. Because the movie was so short, it kind of fell into the trap of feeling like it was very cut up, which I'm going to get into. So speaking of it feeling like it got cut up, it felt like the story was doing a lot of jumps. It felt like there was a lot of timeline jumps, a lot of time jumps, period. It felt like there was a lot of story jumps as well. Like it felt like we were following 3 different storylines at any given time, whether it was about Joe or it was about Michael or it was about something to do with outside of the Jackson family. Things like that. It really had kind of a hard time directing its narrative and sort of finding one sole story to stick to. And then my last gripe that immediately jumped out to me was I wish it drew out its characters a lot more, especially their side characters. More specifically, Quincy Jones. It felt like every time Quincy Jones and Michael were in the same scene together, it was fire. Their chemistry was pretty much immediately from the very first scene where they met. It felt like it was pretty much immediately on par with everyone else in the film. So it was a little upsetting that we didn't get more of Quincy Jones. Same with Michael's handler / bodyguard. Feels like Bill is in the entire movie, but doesn't really play much of a purpose except for some pretty key moments. But he was a very intriguing character, but it felt like he was sort of pushed to the background, which I didn't love because it seemed like every time he was given an opportunity to sort of have a good emotional beat with Michael, it was immediately cut, which kind of leads me into my last point. It feels like every time this movie was going to take a serious tone, it really divvied from it. Now, I don't know if that has something to do with cuts or whatever the case may be, but it does feel like that, especially near the third act, where it felt like some of the concert pieces were definitely strung out, or where it feels like some of the concert pieces were definitely expanded because of what I'm sure a lot of folks know about the third act having to be rewritten and everything. You can kind of feel that. You can really feel that in the movie. It's not necessarily bad because the concert parts are one of the best parts, and I'll get into that as well. Okay, things I love. To start right out, the soundtrack was phenomenal. Listen, when you're making a movie about an icon as big as Michael Jackson, with a discography as big as Michael Jackson's, and the amount of hits that he has, which I think he holds most records for, trying to condense it within the timeline you've given yourself with the songs he made in that timeline and trying to basically find which songs get a backstory, get more attention, get less attention, must be extremely difficult, especially for the people who are doing the composition of the film. However, I thought they nailed it. I thought every song that got love served a very good story purpose. And the ones that, maybe were missing for folks that loved that era, they still got a little bit of love, but ultimately the ones that they chose, you could tell that they chose for a very explicit reason. The second thing I loved about the film, the choreography. Jafar Jackson, man, I'll tell you, my expectations were very high about his dancing specifically. Not even just Jafar, but the entire film, all of the choreography, whether it's with the Jackson brothers or his backup dancers and some of the music video snippets you see, things like that, 1-to-1. I mean that so earnestly. It was 1-to-1. No spoilers, but you can kind of see in the trailer. They do a pretty carbon copy of the Thriller music video. you wouldn't know. You genuinely wouldn't know that it wasn't the actual original, which is kind of crazy to say, but I stand by that. There was also one specific scene that I loved a lot where he was doing some choreography with some people in like this like private dance studio. He was in his element. It showed that side of Michael that was like very hardworking, very determined, very strong in his goal of what he wanted to produce and what he wanted to put out there. It was honestly very kind of gobsmacking to watch. Last thing that I loved about this movie, and obviously I could splurge about it all day. I could, talk about it all day, but Jafar Jackson. Like I said previously, my standards for him were extremely high. He's playing the most iconic artist of all time. Not up for debate, in my opinion. I think that is carbon clear just by records, the impression he's made on the world, the prolonged standing he has. I think he is the most iconic artist we've ever seen and maybe we'll ever see. So to play that role, especially when I'm not the only one who thinks that way, must have been extremely intimidating. And to say he nailed it would be an understatement. Now, obviously, there's some things he can't get perfect because he is not Michael, but ultimately he is doing his best interpretation of that character, not impression, interpretation. And he knocks it out of the park. The voice, the cadence, the way he carries himself, the walk, genuinely everything. It felt like there was moments where I got literal goosebumps because you had to like blink twice to remind yourself that this is not in fact Michael Jackson. It sounds like I'm really like, pushing this like crazy, like speaking with a lot of hyperbole. I am not. That said, again, not a perfect film. Some of the performances could have used a little bit more work. I wish some other characters got more attention. However, I think all in all, as a faithful biopic, I do think it's setting up for the obvious second part that's going to be coming, and I thought it was fantastic. So, as per usual, fun fact, Lady Gaga has a lot of Michael's original clothing and costume. So, the production actually asked her if they could use those costumes and that attire for the film, and she ended up giving them permission to use the authentic costumes on the condition that she could be on set any day she wanted, which is pretty cool, to be honest, to be able to have those items and then be able to sort of leverage that to be a part of maybe one of the biggest films to be made in the last decade. That being said, as per usual, I would see this movie in theaters 4 times. Is it perfect? No. Did I have fun? Yes. And that is what matters. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please interact with it in any way you can. Like, subscribe, repost, whatever the case may be. And don't forget that when you go to the movies, to have fun. I will see you in the next video. Peace out.